We are all very excited to share these findings and recommendations with you. Today we're going to give a bit of background about ourselves, the project, and an overview of our methodology before moving on to highlight a few of the recommendations found in the report. So to begin, just to give an overview of the CREATE plan, it's a blueprint for Delaware's creative economy. The CREATE plan builds upon existing institutional support and addresses areas needing improvement for a stronger creative economy in Delaware. In studying the full creative economy at state, county, and city levels, this is the first plan of its kind in the nation. Developed with input from hundreds of diverse Delawareans from various industries across the state, it outlines post-pandemic challenges facing Delaware's creative and cultural tourism sector and provides actionable solutions while showcasing Delaware's diverse arts and culture offerings through an online map and economic data. The CREATE plan assesses the creative economy in Delaware, identifies areas that could use improvement, and proposes actionable recommendations to do so. The complete plan includes 25 recommendations ranging from policy to program proposals. Today we'll highlight just a few of them that we're most excited about. Just a little bit about Sound Diplomacy. We're a global consultancy focused on driving economic and social growth, resilience, and sustainability for people, places, and cities through research and strategy development. We've worked across 6 continents in over 100 cities and 25 countries, and we've delivered strategies for San Francisco, for St. Louis, for New Orleans, Vancouver, and Niagara Falls, just to name a few. This project assesses the entirety of Delaware's creative economy, which can be understood as a dynamic, interconnected network of individuals, businesses, and nonprofits dedicated to producing, sharing, and celebrating cultural, artistic, and heritage-related goods, services, and activities. Beyond its artistic value, the creative economy is a powerful economic driver that fuels innovation, research and development, tourism, and efforts in placemaking and branding. It supports a total of 18,551 jobs in Delaware with an output of $3.7 billion, surpassing industries like wholesale trade and agriculture. Before we get into the detail of the recommendations, first a quick look at the research methodology, which included 6 interlocking steps. So we started with a regulatory assessment. This looks at the full analysis of the regulatory framework and programs that exist in Delaware relevant to the creative economy, followed by an economic impact, where we measure the direct, indirect, and induced economic impact of the creative economy in Delaware. Our mapping showed an index of 2,534 creative economy assets in Delaware using a database built from secondary sources and georeference with Sound Diplomacy's mapping tool. Our stakeholder engagement included an online survey and roundtables held from August to September last year, in which over 600 stakeholders from all 3 counties were engaged. We then used a SWOT analysis looking at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to combine all of our findings, and then put all of that together to create our action plan and recommendations. All informed by the findings in the research throughout the project to create 25 actionable recommendations informed by international best case examples. One of the most exciting elements to come from our research is the interactive map as well, which I'll pass on to Justin shortly to preview. The stakeholder engagement, we heard from, as I said, over 600 people across Delaware. This culminates in 25 focus groups, 227 focus group attendees, 336 survey participants, 10 community engagement captains, and 55 launch event attendees. Our project working group included the Delaware Division of the Arts, Delaware Department of Education, Department of State, arts organization, and individual creatives. With the voice of over 600 Delawareans animating the CREATE plan, we feel confident that the report can speak to a broad coalition of creatives in the state. Even if you are unable to participate, we hope that the report speaks to your lived experience and perspective. The plan could not have happened without the thoughtful and timely involvement of so many stakeholders across Delaware's creative economy, and for that, we thank you. So to look briefly at the economic findings, the creative economy is a $3.7 billion industry. In 2021, it contributed $2.2 billion directly to the Delaware economy. And the multiplier effect is 1.603, which means that for every $1 of outputs generated by the creative economy, an additional 60 cents is created locally across other industries. As this study is the first of its kind in the state to assess the economic impact of the entire creative economy, including for and non-profit entities, our methodology and findings are more inclusive than previous studies. Looking at employment, the creative economy supports thousands of jobs. In 2021, it supported 18,551 local jobs, which is 4.1% of the state's employment. I think you'd agree is a significant portion. The full report includes detailed data concerning sector-specific salary and income realities and disparities. Now I'll hand over to Justin, who will discuss the interactive map and a few of the report's recommendations.
Yes, so the map is one of the more exciting parts of the project, mostly because you can play with it at home. It is a tool that supports future creative economic growth and enables organizations to monitor changes over time. Key benefits include identifying statewide resources for accurate needs assessment and strategic planning, providing additional data to refine existing strategic plans based on what has and has not worked in the past, including previously overlooked entities and encouraging new collaborations, facilitating connections and partnerships between like-minded organizations, and statewide representation of creative businesses that can drive excitement and collective goal achievement. So we're going to just show you the map a little bit here. So we're starting here, obviously, the Delaware Agricultural Museum. This is just one asset in the map. When you click on these little colored dots, you can get a lot of information about particular assets, obviously, what field it's in, category, what the address is, the website and phone number, which obviously has significant use already. And then if we begin to zoom out, we begin to see other assets that are located in Dover and nearby across Kent County, and finally the entire state. And so each color represents a different sector within the creative economy, and you can see a number of them on the right there. The full listing of what's included in the report is on the left, or on the map is on the left there. This is a breakdown by sector, obviously, and assets. We can also identify it with a cluster heat map, which is at the top there. You can click that on and off, which represents the information in a slightly different way, obviously. It can also be broken down by county, and the three shades of teal that you see there is a heat map as well. So obviously there are predominant assets in Newcastle County. And then you can also limit the map based on subsector. So if we were to look at tourism, for example, we can see a variety of assets throughout the states. And then if we combine it with different sectors, as it is now, yeah, any two is good. So you could put different sectors together. And so depending on what field you're working in, it allows you to see other assets that are nearby to you and maybe foster collaborations that had not been previously considered. There's also a search function at the bottom there. We've typed in already Delaware Agricultural Museum. So if we click on that, we'll go back to where we came from, and it zooms us right in here. So again, it's available now. I highly recommend that you take it home, fiddle with it a little bit, and I imagine you will cook up all kinds of uses for it that didn't even occur to us. The following analysis and action plan is informed. Our strategic plan provides 25 actionable recommendations for government partners at every level, leaders in the private sector, and stakeholders within the creative economy. There are considerations throughout the report related to the recommendations concerning diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion in all creative economy programs, gender equity, cultural diversity, and language accessibility, and it attempts to address the unique needs and opportunities of every county and a number of cities in the state. So to look at the Create Plan goal snapshot, these are just a few of the goals, and they're related to the recommendations that we're going to cover in just a moment. Stimulate economic activity by fostering development and growth and increase public and private funding opportunities across the creative economy. Put cultural tourism at the heart of Delaware's brand and marketing efforts and expand existing cultural offerings. Provide more equitable public education and increase the access that young people have to arts education. Foster cross-sector collaboration and interdisciplinary dialogue to create new artistic and economic opportunities, and tackle inequality by embedding creative economy growth efforts into every community and county. So our recommendations are organized by theme. So I'm going to go through a number of the themes. I'll outline some of our key research findings, run through all of the recommendations so you can hear all 25, and I'll drill down on a few of the recommendations in more detail. So our first theme is creative economy development. Our research found that the creative economy, as you heard, supports a total of 18,551 jobs. I think that's worth saying as often as possible, with an output of $3.7 billion, surpassing industries like wholesale trade and agriculture. Sorry, Agriculture Museum. There's uneven regional distribution, and stakeholders outside of urban centers feel excluded from the larger creative economy. Creative sectors largely operate independently, limiting cross-collaboration opportunities. There is an outdated and confusing regulatory environment that hinders creative economy growth, and increased cultural hubs and districts would boost the creative economy. So the recommendations that we've developed based on this research is to establish a creative economy task force that works to build cross-sectoral collaboration and engage stakeholders, establish creative hubs across the state in every county, update special event and performance-related permits and licenses in the state, county, and city level, and develop a statewide digital one-stop shop for permits and licenses. So we'll highlight then recommendation 2, establish creative hubs in each county. Creative hubs are physical spaces which play a crucial role in fostering innovation, entrepreneurship, and professional development, incubating creative ventures, and the overall development of the creative economy. Stakeholders should work together to establish creative hubs in Newcastle, Kent, and Sussex counties, and special attention should be paid to improving the accessibility of rehearsal spaces, particularly in the south of the state. Creative hubs can be state-supported, fully private, or run via public-private partnership. In terms of a partnership approach, the state or local government could support through capital support, zoning, incentivizing organizations and municipalities to create their own cultural hubs, or the provision of empty spaces for a nominal fee, with a board appointed to manage space. Creative hubs can generate income via membership fees, one-off fees for the use of materials and tools, event ticketing, space rental, and sponsorships. Creative hubs should be accessible to all members of the community and proactive in attracting a cross-section of society. Hubs should make a concerted effort to highlight and support the work of BIPOC, queer, and disabled artists. Moving to recommendation 3, update special events and performance-related permits and licenses. For Delaware's creative economy to grow, it is imperative for the state and its subdivisions to implement a renewed policy framework related to the nighttime economy and the performance and celebration sector. This includes refreshing regulations related to liquor licensing, sound ordinances, special event permitting, all ages ordinances, busking guidelines, and agent of change regulations. We highlight the key permits and licenses with quite a bit of detail, which require attention, and also provide national benchmarks on each topic within the full report. Some of these, such as liquor licensing, require attention at the state level, while sound ordinances and event permits require attention from regional bodies. This recommendation involves drafting policy proposals based on the provided benchmarks that are in the report and working with key stakeholders to build a strong message around policy proposals and their purpose. Sussex County's recent efforts to streamline and digitize its special events permits should be celebrated and used as a basis for statewide improvements. Moving to recommendation 4, develop a statewide digital one-stop shop for permits and licenses. In partnership with supporting stakeholders, the state should build and implement a digital one-stop shop for special event licenses and permits. A one-stop shop is a digital platform that centralizes all relevant information regarding the creative economy, including regulations, funding opportunities, calendars, databases, and professionalization programs. The one-stop shop would need to be owned by the state and managed on a day-to-day basis to make sure that it is up to date and functional. The one-stop shop will need to be easily found via the state's website and should also be listed on the websites of regional bodies. Opaque permit and licensing procedures are rife with discriminatory practices, and our research found mention of event permits being rejected or delayed because of thinly veiled bigotry. For these reasons, the one-stop shop should present a process that is as objective as possible with an active design that prevents these sorts of practices. Our next theme is industry support. Our research found, as you heard, that small businesses account for 70.7% of the creative economy, with an additional 17.8% that are self-employed. Stakeholders noted that funding from private philanthropic organizations, while it exists, is inconsistent year to year, and the top self-reported skill gaps mainly relate to business and management for both creatives and organizations. The recommendations coming out of this research including the creative economy in statewide business and economic development communications and programs, creating a full-time government position to represent the interests of the creative economy's self-employed and small businesses, the creation of fair pay guidelines for artists, creatives, and professionals in the creative industries, and the modernization of Delaware's film and media production industry. So we'll take a look then at recommendation 5, including the creative economy in business and development, communications, and programs. This recommendation is intended to increase awareness of the impact of the creative economy, its workforce, and the value that it brings to other industries in Delaware. This involves promoting the creative economy to chambers of commerce, export departments, small business development departments, and decision makers in economic innovation and strategic partnerships. Detail should include information on the businesses and subsectors that form the creative economy, the economic evidence that demonstrates the impact on the regional economy, how workers and businesses within it can and should be supported, and potential export and cross-sectoral opportunities. The state can support by directing relevant agencies to highlight the economic and social impact of the creative economy in marketing and business strategies, placing the creative economy as a focal point for future economic development planning and strategies, and explicitly including for-profit creative economy organizations in funding and investment opportunities. Creative economy business support should always be informed by the current economic inequalities that exist in the state. Jumping ahead to recommendation 8, modernizing Delaware's film and media production industry. Looking to the successes of nearby jurisdictions that have developed a comprehensive approach to the film and media industry, Delaware should refresh media production-related legislation, permits, and policy, especially related to film permits and tax incentives. Consideration should also be given to means for providing assistance to productions with hiring local crews, providing facilities and vendors for production support, as well as providing extensive guidelines concerning sustainability and diversity considerations. The current Delaware Motion Picture and Television Development Commission should update its purview to be inclusive of the wider film and media industries, including television, various digital platforms, podcasting, streaming, video games, etc., and increase advocacy for both local and international productions and projects. A name change as a first step could reinforce an updated perspective and purview. The commission should also be subject to increased transparency in terms of decision-making and ongoing activities, with information from meetings and decisions around budgeting made available on a public platform. As a starting point, the Delaware Motion Picture and Television Development Commission should advocate for a new model of support for the audiovisual industry in the state, leading to the drafting of a new film and entertainment bill for Delaware. The commission also needs to work to be more representative and inclusive of Delaware's film community. Towards these ends, any new guiding documentation or charter should specifically articulate how representation on the commission is going to work and how access to it might be extended in a meaningful way. To move to tourism as our next theme, our research found, and I should say beforehand that this is primarily derived from our survey analysis, and so you might find that some of the research here is perception versus reality, or realities that are developing, but of course we know that combating perception is the hardest thing, really. Our research found that Delaware's substantial but under-integrated tourism industry is primarily concentrated in Sussex County. Geospatial correlation exists between tourism, performing arts, and cultural heritage, and this presents new tourism growth opportunities. In our survey, 78% of creatives and 75% of creative organizations said that they do not rely on tourism for their income. Delaware is not perceived presently as a cultural tourism destination by creatives or creative organization. And in general, there is a perception that Delaware exports consumers but does not import them. And so the recommendations around this research involve developing a statewide cultural economy brand to benefit tourism, economic development, export, and audience development, the increase of cultural tourism offerings, and emphasizing arts and culture in Delaware's tourism communications. So to take a look at recommendation 9, developing a statewide cultural economy brand. A statewide brand for Delaware's creative economy would consist of a distinctive image, identity, and reputation that is strategically crafted and communicated to emphasize the state's cultural, artistic, and creative assets. A cohesive statewide cultural economy brand can be used by tourism, export, economic development, and art agencies. This will give Delaware a unified voice when it comes to its creative economy and help Delaware both nationally and internationally as a place that has a growing and strong arts and cultural scene. In order to be effective, the resulting brand will need to be a vision that is supported by Delaware's political leadership and prominent stakeholders. The vision should be infused into all of the preceding recommendations, such as the inclusion of Delaware's creative economy in economic development efforts, as I discussed earlier. Because of this, the cultural economy brand needs to be a combined effort between both legislators and business and nonprofit leaders, as well as creatives and members of the state's creative scene. As an overall goal of the CREATE plan is to bolster creative industry-related tourism in the state, each recommendation in the report contributes in some way to the overall project that is outlined in this specific recommendation. Our next theme is funding. While 64%, our research found that while 64% of creatives derive income from creative work, 83% of creatives and 78% of creative organizations express dissatisfaction with pay. The creative economy requires additional funding structures, with 67% of creatives and 68% of institutions not receiving grants in the last 2 years. Future funding and granting schemes must prioritize equity. Over the last 2 fiscal years, the state budget for the Delaware Division of the Arts has increased by a total of $2 million, which is fantastic, as a result of collective advocacy, but this comes after a decade of stagnant funding. Though funding streams offered by the DDOA need to continue to be sustainably supported and expanded, they should not bear the full burden of arts funding in the state. New streams are needed in related agencies, such as those representing education, tourism, health and wellness, small business, and from county governments. The recommendations related to funding include identifying additional revenue streams to support Delaware's creative economy and the expansion of equitable arts funding. The discussion of increased funding in this report is not exclusively concerned with government arts funding, to be clear, but also various free market elements. Various recommendations throughout the report speak to actions that begin to identify and secure these funding sources. So looking at recommendation 12, identify these additional revenue streams. This recommendation is devised to identify funding sources and investment opportunities for the entirety of the creative economy, including both nonprofit organizations and for-profit arts and creative sectors. This involves shoring up creative industry funding from a variety of different potential sources and partnerships. In terms of the nonprofit sector, new grants may be initiated aimed specifically at BIPOC artists and practitioners working in various media in order to expand equitable funding to the arts in the state. In terms of the for-profit sector, business leaders in the region can be encouraged to find ways to support the state's creatives and the creative economy. Business and business leaders need guidance on exactly how they can support the creative economy on a philanthropic basis. Ideas include sourcing creative services such as graphic design, marketing, photography, and content creation from local creative businesses, providing financial support through the sponsorship of local arts events, festivals, and exhibitions, the development of micro-grant programs, and participating in advocacy efforts to promote policies that support the creative economy. In every case, a majority proportion of additional funds should be earmarked for projects that provide arts access to under-resourced communities. Our research found that improved arts education is needed in order to establish a thriving creative ecosystem. Funding constraints and educator compensation hinder arts education in schools. There is a lack of meaningful guidelines for students at the secondary level, and there is less than equitable access to arts education in rural communities and communities of color. The recommendations developed out of this research include securing arts funding for every student in public education, making arts education mandatory in secondary education, improving career development opportunities for secondary students in creative fields, and advocating for more pathway courses and associate degrees related to the creative economy. The first recommendation then, securing arts funding for every student in public education. The state should earmark a yearly budget for arts education, covering primary and secondary schooling. Inspired by California's Arts and Music in Schools funding guarantee, which requires the state, starting in 2023-24, to provide additional funding to increase arts instruction and/or arts programming in public schools. The amount required each year would equal 1% of the constitutionally required state and local funding that public schools received the year before. This funding will be considered a payment above the constitutionally required amount for funding for public schools and community colleges. Potentially similar legislation in Delaware should be weighted towards supporting schools in under-resourced neighborhoods and also help schools cover administrative costs involved in implementing the budget. Schools would be able to use this additional funding to either support a full-time arts teacher, ideally, or depending on the situation, use it to bring in freelancers or nonprofit arts education program providers to supplement the arts education that they are already providing. Recommendation 17 is advocate for more pathway courses and associate degrees. Students in secondary and non-university higher education require more opportunities to see the creative economy as a place for career development, see how their academic and technical education can tie in with these sectors, and be given the chance to network with stakeholders in the creative economy. In the context of Delaware, this situation can be improved by the introduction of annual career days for 15 to 24-year-olds and the founding of a mentorship program, especially for students for whom formal internships are not an option. Delaware should seek to expand the options available to young people and adults wanting to gain formal education in topics and skills related to creative economy sectors. Pathway courses and associate degrees are two options for diversifying the higher education offering beyond standard university degrees and MAs. These courses should be designed to meet the needs of the industry and the creative economy with the career goals and aspirations of students and adults looking to re-enter education. To that end, courses should be designed based on further stakeholder research that engages people, specifically women and BIPOC folks, who are currently underrepresented in Delaware's creative economy. Our next theme is professional development. Our research found that the creative economy needs more accessible and formalized professional development opportunities in areas like marketing, social media, fundraising, business, and financial management. There is a lack of formal mentoring or guidance programs available for young creatives. Internships where they exist are organized mostly on an ad hoc basis, and a lack of professional development pipelines contributes to brain drain in the state. The recommendations coming out of this research include hosting professional development workshops and lectures on a regular basis, improving professionalization related to copyright and intellectual property with the support of legal professionals, and the formalization of creative economy internships. That first recommendation, hosting professional development workshops, involves organizing a regular series that features stakeholders located both within and without the state. Knowledge gaps identified in this project stakeholder engagement, as I just said, that would benefit from increased development include marketing, social media, fundraising, business, financial management. Workshops can be in person, but should always be streamed or recorded for greater access or made fully online. And wherever possible, English and Spanish bilingualism should be accounted for, with Spanish subtitles added to videos and Spanish language versions of documents made available, along with sign language interpretation and fully accessible workshop venues. Our next theme is infrastructure development. The research found that access to creative infrastructure is limited and geographically unbalanced in the state. Delaware performs below, that's not an actual on that one. Stakeholders from the performing arts and music sector highlighted a lack of spaces for rehearsals or workshops. Public transportation inequalities disproportionately affect minorities and historically marginalized communities, and downtown development plans are not presently seeking to secure people sufficient access to cultural activities. Recommendations related to this include identifying and promoting spaces for the creative economy and supporting access to increased public transportation in Delaware. In terms of recommendation 21, in downtowns, deindustrialized areas, and rural communities, there are unused or underused spaces that could be repurposed and used as workshops, pop-up retail units, and office spaces for individuals, organizations, and businesses in the creative economy. Those in the creative ecosystem must have equitable access to space and equipment. Short-term and pop-up retail units and workshops, as well as mixed-use spaces featuring fairs and other types of events, can become part of Delaware's cultural tourism offering and would benefit long-term placemaking efforts. Urban development and regeneration projects often have a penchant for displacing local communities, especially those from historically under-resourced communities, and future development schemes with this cultural aspect must have established quotas to preserve community engagement and access, which are enforceable. Our final theme, and thanks for sticking with me, is marketing and audience development. Our research found that creatives have struggled to effectively market their work to attract the broadest possible audience. There is an overall emphasis on word-of-mouth promotion over social media and internet in the state. Audiences do not necessarily know where to go for information regarding activities and events, and state-funded granting opportunities do not allow presently for creatives to include marketing in their budgets. Our related recommendations then are to offer transit shelter and outdoor advertising space to nonprofit arts organizations for free or a nominal fee, improve the maturity of creative industry-specific marketing practices and knowledge with work-study placements and grants, and to perform an annual marketing campaign to promote Delaware scene. Now, each of these recommendations is conversant in the full report with the previously discussed recommendations concerning funding, industry support, tourism, and professional development. Thank you very much for your time. I hope that each of you is able to find a recommendation or two that excites you and that you can contribute to. I'm going to hand it back over to Neil now, but before I do so, I just want to give a quick thank you to Shawnee, Neil, Kenyetta, Hyro, everyone at First Ascent, all of the community engagement captains, and everyone who participated in our stakeholder engagement for being such great partners and collaborators and resources in the development of this work. Thank you.